NFL analysts are pushing for the New York Jets to trade for young quarterback Bryce Young as he's fallen out of favor, and the New York Jets are going to need to replace Aaron Rodgers probably sooner rather than later, and Matt and I are going to break it down. So what's up, guys? Welcome back to Jets Digest. We're back. And before anything, guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel because 4% of you are subscribed who are watching this video. Somehow 96.1% of you aren't, so that's over 100%. That's how absurd it is you guys are not subscribing to this. But let's talk about some football, some Bryce Young action. Bryce Young obviously fell out of favor with the Carolina Panthers recently, and in response, they put out Andy Dalton there, and the 36-year-old redhead went out there and cooked. 3 tight ends for Andy Dalton, looked absolutely like a solid bridge quarterback if the Panthers do decide that Bryce Young is not the man of the future. And that's kind of what we've seen be said, as if you take a look, several teams, according to Adam Schefter, have expressed interest in trading for quarterback Bryce Young, despite the fact that Coach Dave Canales said the Carolina Panthers do not intend to trade the former number 1 overall pick. Now, the Panthers have been contacted by certain teams, according to league sources, while other teams have mulled a Young trade within their own organizations. And as Sports Illustrated mentioned, the Jets are set to contend this season with Aaron Rodgers. However, only Tyrod Taylor is on the depth chart outside of him, as Jordan Travis is currently injured and could be the QB of the future, but you're never too sure. And it could be a problem with when the starters when it comes to a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, this is why I try not to talk in these graphics because I can't read, guys, but he's going to retire sooner rather than later, and the Jets are going to need a plan for the future. The front office has used the assets at its disposal to make the team better right now. They're in win-now mode, obviously, and they'd be well off to decide at least some resource or decide to keep some resources for the future. Guys, as I said, I can't read, and frankly, I can't talk, so Matt's going to talk about this Bryce Young thing.
All right. Yep, Chris. So first of all, I want to talk about the availability potentially of Bryce Young, because you mentioned how they said that they wanted to. They're not totally sold on trading him yet. But week 2 after the game, Coach Canales for the Carolina Panthers said Bryce Young's our quarterback. Bryce Young's our guy. Less than 24 hours later, Bryce Young was benched. So when they say that they don't really want to trade him, I think those words they've shown in the past to not be 100% set in stone. They can do whatever they want at any point. So the thing is, now talking about the Jets, of course have Aaron Rodgers for what's most likely 1 or 2 more years. It would be 1 year if they win the Super Bowl this year, which is probably not going to happen. They could, but it probably won't. So he'll be back next year. And then after that, we would need another quarterback. Tyrod Taylor's on a 1-year contract. He's not going to be there. The Jets just drafted Jordan Travis out of Florida State University in the 5th round. If you watch his film, there were a lot of missed wide receivers on the film. So I'm not totally sold on Jordan Travis at this moment. But Bryce Young, that's a guy coming out of college, very small. But the thing that gets you drafted in the 1st round of the NFL draft is elite traits. And the thing that was elite about Bryce Young coming out of Alabama last year was his mind. Now, he's great at determining what kind of defense the opponent is in and being able to figure out which receivers are going to be coming open during the play and then throwing the ball with anticipation to get it out on time within the confines of their offense to the open wide receivers. So the first year in Carolina, the Panthers were so bad that it almost didn't matter what Bryce Young did. There was just absolutely nothing he could do. It ended up with them. They fired their head coach 11 games into the season. Then they got a different coach, and now they have a new coach this year. And the important thing for Jets fans, the important thing to remember from that season for Bryce Young is there were almost no plays to be made, but other than throwing the ball deep, he made the plays that were there to make. So now going on to this season, it looks like the Carolina Panthers just have a broken quarterback. Looking at him, you can see his facial expressions after so many plays. He just doesn't look like he wants to be there. And the problem is his play has gotten so much worse this year, which makes me a little bit worried if the Jets were to go out and trade for him. Now, of course, the 1st overall pick last year, people really liked him last year. In my mock drafts, I expected him to go 1st overall over C.J. Stroud, who we knew was a really good quarterback as well. But the scary thing about trading for Bryce Young would be looking at the difference between the Carolina Panthers offense with Young and then with Andy Dalton. And we know Andy Dalton, maybe he's serviceable, but we know he's not good. And like you said, Chris, he had 3 touchdowns on Sunday. Like, if he can do that with the Carolina Panthers offense, how much does Bryce Young really have to add to the Jets offense?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, especially like now it's important to note looking at the Panthers that they're not good. It doesn't matter who's behind center for them. They're not a good team. They just don't have that much talent on the roster. Last year we saw Bryce Young have one weapon, which was a past his prime Adam Thielen. Now Thielen's still there, but teams saw Adam Thielen go out there and for a little bit look like that Minnesota Vikings Adam Thielen, at least for a short amount of time. But then, one, he was really being worked and he's older, and also teams are able to figure out that Bryce was consistently going to Thielen, that Thielen was easily his number one guy because, frankly, he was the only weapon that Bryce Young had on that team. Now, the Panthers still, like, they're just not great. If you're a young quarterback, if you're Bryce Young, you're, a solid 19, 20 games into your NFL career. You've had 3 head coaches. You've been benched because the rest of your team's not good. The only fear now is we all expected Andy Dalton to go out there and throw for like 167 yards and an interception or something. But once in a while, Andy Dalton, like he did on the Saints, will randomly pop off and look phenomenal. Does it mean that Dalton is going to be their longtime quarterback? Obviously not. He's 36 years old. He's not their guy for the future. They're going to have to find someone else. And they still have Bryce, who they are going to lean into trusting for the most part. Now, it is so price-based. How much would the Jets be able to get for him if they were to trade for him? Now, if you're giving up a later-round pick, then yeah, you go for it. But at this point, he's not at all worth a first-round pick, not even sort of. It's just Andy Dalton single-handedly lowered Bryce Young's trade value in one game insanely. Like that, it's an absurd difference because it now does make you think, oh, maybe Bryce Young's bad? Like, something that I think the entire football world was behind Bryce Young when he got benched. Just like, it's not your fault. Your team sucks. Who knows if your coach is good at his job? Your last 2 coaches weren't really good at their jobs. You're going to be okay, dude. Like, just keep working. Even LeBron tweeted out and was like, Bryce, you're going to be fine. Like, it's not your fault. Like, the entire world rallied behind Bryce Young. And then Andy Dalton's like, guys, I kind of just won and threw for 3 touchdowns, so it might be on Bryce right here, which is obviously something to note. Now, I do think that looking at this Panthers team, they're still bad, and I expect Andy Dalton to play pretty poorly over his next few games. Honestly, I don't think this is going to stay a thing, but if you're the Jets and you go out there and you want to land Bryce Young, you're going to be able to try to strike at the trade deadline because you have to think now the Panthers are probably way more inclined to trade him after seeing that maybe it's not just their team being the problem.
Yeah, so I think the trade deadline is week 8, or it's either just after week 7 or right before the week 8 game or right before the week 9 game, somewhere around week 8. So, but if the Panthers, if their plan is, if they're truly done with Bryce Young, then GMs are going to be on the phones now. They'll be picking up calls on him. They'll be open to trading him, which is something I expect them. They at least have to be open to listening to it. And I think he would really be helpful for the Jets because, like we said, the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. They can develop him properly. They have a number 1 wide receiver weapon, which is something he didn't have in Carolina. They have a first-round drafted left tackle, and maybe I know the Panthers also had a top 10 tackle, but he hasn't worked out for Bryce. So maybe if he comes in with the Jets and is able to sit down for 1 or 2 years behind Aaron Rodgers, he learns to get his confidence back and he can turn potentially back into a little bit of what he was at Alabama. And we're going to see, Chris, I think he's going to go somewhere. I have to imagine the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, since his name is on the team, he's the head coach of the team, he wants to handpick his quarterback, and he's going to probably talk to the GM of the team and tell him, here's what I want. I want this quarterback. Bryce Young wasn't my guy. Me being a good coach or a bad coach, I don't want it to be hinging on a guy who I didn't handpick. So he's probably available for trade. I would have to imagine if the Jets were to prime away from the Panthers today, it would cost a 3rd-round pick, which is a little bit scary. The Jets lost their 2026 3rd-round pick. Right now, conditionally, in 2026 going to the Eagles in the Hassan Reddick deal. So if they were to give up their 2025 as well, they would be without a third round pick for the next 2 years. So that's like you were talking about. If it was a late round draft pick, it would be definitely worth it for the Jets. And if it was an early round draft pick, it definitely wouldn't be worth it. And I agree with that. But that third round pick, that's where it gets kind of scary because I feel like there is upside there. But at the same time, it's very scary because that head coach was very successful 2 years ago with Geno Smith, last year with Baker Mayfield, and now this year, it looks like he's successful with Andy Dalton. So maybe Bryce Young's a problem, but I really hope he isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a world where you almost wait, because if the Jets don't get Bryce Young, obviously, shocker here, it's not the end of the world. Like, it's one of these situations where if you could land him, and you could land him on a bargain, that's phenomenal. Third round pick does make me a little weary. Fourth round pick, I'm doing it without any hesitation. I think that's where you completely just decide, okay, we're running this. This is how we're going to roll from now on, and we're just going to trade picks to try to win football games and maybe, not wonder, hey, what are we doing at quarterback the second Aaron Rodgers retires? Because for a moment and a half, it felt like Zach Wilson might be the answer, but then Zach Wilson actually had to play football, and, well, things changed. So, guys, let us know what you think down below. Like this video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. If you don't do any of that, Matt's name tag is going to disappear for the majority of this video again, and I'm still not going to be able to read. If you do subscribe, well, then I'll learn how to read, and Matt's name tag won't disappear. To the guy who made that name tag thing happen, you're an idiot. Also, it's me. Go Jets.